During the Cold War, the Soviet Union and the United States had multiple competitions. The Cold War was fought through a massive arms race to develop nuclear weapons. The space race was when the Soviet Union and the United States competed to prove the excellence of its technology. The armed forces was when the nations fought for weapons, such as the nuclear weapon. The Soviet Union was the first to go to space, but the United States was the first to send a man to the moon. Next up is the Korean and Vietnam War, and China falls to communism.
Thank you, Marilyn. The Korean War lasted from 1950 to 1953. North Korea invaded the South with 75,000 men. They invaded through the 38th parallel, which is the division between North and South Korea. America then entered the war on behalf of South Korea, but they wanted to create an armistice with the North. The general at this time was General MacArthur. This war was the war against the forces of international communism. The Vietnam War. Before the war started, Vietnam was under French rule. The Geneva Conference split Vietnam, the 17th parallel. The conflict started between the communist government of North Vietnam and South Vietnam. The principal ally of the South was America. Ho Chi Minh was a communist that created the Indochina Communist Party. Ngo Dinh Diem was the South Vietnam president, and he was anti-communist. He pushed aside Emperor Bao, who was actually the Emperor of South Vietnam. The entire country of Vietnam should follow communism. This is what Ho Chi Minh wanted. The war ended when communist forces took over South Vietnam and the country was unified as the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. China falls to communism. The bamboo curtains separated the North and the South. The North was communist and the South was anti-communist. Mao Zedong was the leader of the Communist Party in China. He created this party because he felt as if the Republic of China failed their country. In 1949, the Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong, killed off the Nationalist Army, which was led by Jishu, of 1.5 million people. He overthrew Jishu and the Nationalists, and then he created the People's Republic of China. Then, all the Chinese nationalists fled to Taiwan.
Thank you, Elisa. And now it's on to the Cuban Missile Crisis. It started on October 14, 1962. President John F. Kennedy was informed that the Soviet Union created nuclear missiles in Cuba. In response, the president created an intense 13-day conference with Nikita Khrushchev to resolve about what was going to happen. Nikita Khrushchev led the Soviet Union. While in the meeting, the president created a group of advisors that said to either attack or to accept Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, but the president said no to both options. The president created a solution with three components. The U.S. would not invade Cuba if the Soviet Union withdrew their missiles, a private demand threatening to attack Cuba within 24 hours if the offer was rejected, and the last one is a secret sweetener that promised to withdraw U.S. missiles from Turkey within 6 months. And at the last minute of the meeting, Nikita Khrushchev, who led the Soviet Union, accepted the offer. Now is the Bay of Pigs invasion. It started on April 1961. The U.S. Department and the Central Intelligence Agency launched a full-scale invasion of Cuba to overthrow Fidel Castro. 1,400 American-trained Cubans invaded Cuba from a southern shore called the Bay of Pigs. The invasion failed because they were outnumbered. And the reason why there was an invasion was because Fidel Castro overthrew an American general named Fulgencio Batista. And that's the reason, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Next up is the Reagan's plan for Star Wars. So Ronald Reagan gave a speech in the Oval Room in 1983. The space base was armed with lasers and nuclear warheads. It shoots down nuclear ballistic missiles fired from the Soviet Union. The research started, but it turned out to be too complex and much research had to be done, so it was later on canceled. The fall of the Berlin Wall. On November 9, 1989, the head of the East German Communist Party announced the citizens of the GDR could cross the border whenever they pleased. That night, huge crowds swarmed the wall. Some crossed freely into West Berlin, and others brought hammers and picks and began to chip away at the wall. How the Cold War ended. In 1989, all the communist states that in the region replaced its government with a non-communist one. Over 2 years after Reagan had challenged the Soviet premier in a speech at Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, Mr. Gorbachev teared down the wall. By 1999, the Soviet Union itself had fallen apart and the Cold War was over.
Now these were the hottest moments of the Cold War.